Apple release amazing new things. When this was announced, everybody got really excited. So, looking forward to seeing how you've seen people using this out in the real world.
Yep.
Take it away, Emily. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro, Marcus. So as Marcus said, I am here to talk to you about integrating return to service, specifically in educational IT. I'm a customer success manager at Jamf, and I work with the universities and K-12 schools across Asia Pacific. So let's dive into what return to service really means. So imagine the start of the school year. You're there surrounded by the desks of iPads piled up, waiting to be refreshed and hoping from hopping from one to the next. You're tapping away, choosing languages, connecting to Wi-Fi, approving remote management. Sounds familiar? It's the kind of routine that racks up thousands of taps just to get a school's worth of iPads ready. And what about shared devices? Perhaps using shared iPad, or maybe even Jamf setup and reset to manage shared devices. Both options are solid, but they come with their own challenges. Shared iPad, for instance, works well in many shared environments, but some scenarios, the overhead of setting this up might create more work than what is needed, particularly if you only have a small fleet of iPads. So maybe you're on the lookout for something a bit simpler. With the release of iOS and iPadOS 17, Apple has thrown us a lifeline with the new Return to Service MDM command. This new command is all about automation, making the whole process of managing shared devices and refreshing as smooth as silk. We're talking about reaching that dream state of zero touch in mobile device deployments. So this is where Return to Service comes in. It's basically a turbocharged version of Apple's Erase Device command. When you send out the Erase Device command with Return to Service, you also send out a Wi-Fi profile, and if needed, an MDM profile. And having previous language settings cached on the device, this allows the device to automatically reconnect to Wi-Fi, approve remote management, and auto-advance through the entire setup assistant process. What you end up with is a device that refreshes itself. No hands needed. It boots up to the home screen, auto-enrolls back into the MDM, and starts pulling down apps. Your device is ready in less than 10 minutes. So what we've heard so far is that return to service is super quick and barely needs any babysitting from IT admins or end users. It's pretty much the ideal solution for any place that needs to keep devices clean and data-free between users. Take the education sector, for example. Imagine a relief teacher starts the day by picking up an iPad loaded up with all the apps they need. Once their day is over, they just hand the iPad back. Overnight, it's either automatically wiped clean, ready for the next teacher, or maybe the teacher or office staff can actually hit reset themselves. Either way, all personal data and browser histories are wiped clean off the device, making it pristine and ready for its next user. Or picture a library where librarians lend out iPads for the day. They could just scan a QR code on the device as it's returned, and this could trigger a script or use something like Jamf Return to Service app, and just like that, the device is set to reset itself as part of the check-in routine. Perhaps you have a trolley set of iPads that are used as sessional devices. With Return to Service, all user data can be removed at the end of a session, either remotely via IT with a one-click script or by enabling the Return to Service app and empowering end users. This same idea works great for temporary device replacements at the IT help desk or for loaning out spare devices when someone's main device is out for repairs or forgotten at home. One of my university customers over here, University of Melbourne, have really embraced the Return to Service app in their environment, using it in 2 of their faculties with plans to roll it out to more. Students were signing into a specific website for class use, and clearing of sessional data was becoming troublesome. With the Return to Service app, at class end, a quick tap on the app resets the device for the next user. Since there's no need to keep data between sessions, it's a breeze for IT admins to maintain a smooth shared device flow without fussing over managed Apple IDs. And let's not forget about those end-of-year refreshes in schools. Normally, you'd send out a wipe command to each device, then manually set them up for the new year. What a chore. But with return to service, just send out one command and all the iPads wipe themselves and set up automatically, no touches needed. We've all been there, right? Testing something out on an iPad, needing a fresh start, hitting erase all contents and settings, then waiting around for it to wipe and reset, and come back and you've forgotten to skip all those settings in pre-stage enrolment and you've got to click through all those steps. But with return to service, you can get an iPad cleared and back to the home screen in the time that it takes you to make a coffee. Now that's what I call efficient. Now before we get too carried away with all the cool things return to service can do, let's take a step back and talk about some important limitations and prerequisites that we need to keep in mind. We already know that return to service is only available for devices on iPadOS 17. So if you're working with older devices, you'll want to consider this before planning your deployment. Your device must be enrolled and managed through an MDM. And you should also be aware that any steps that are set to be shown in pre-stage will be skipped. My suggestion would be that you would have a dedicated Wi-Fi profile for return to service. This profile gets cached on the device and is used automatically during the setup assistant phase. This Wi-Fi profile needs to allow for seamless access without any user interaction and definitely no captive portal. You should ensure that the scoping of this profile will remain throughout enrolment. Once the device is online and your apps begin to install, you can deploy your standard Wi-Fi profile. Now, since the beauty of return to service lies in its unattended setup process, it's important that there's no user interaction required during enrolment. This means no enrolment customizations or user authentication. If your devices are enrolled in automated device enrolment with Apple School Manager or Apple Business Manager, the device automatically reaches out to the MDM server provided by Apple at device activation and fetches the necessary MDM profile, so you don't need to include it manually. But if your devices aren't registered in ASM or ABM, then you will need to ensure an MDM profile is provided as part of the command. As you'll see in a moment, the MDM profile and Wi-Fi profile must be base64 encoded. Let's explore how we can use return to service with Jamf. With Jamf Pro API, since Jamf Pro 1050, the capability to send return to service with the erase device command has been available. You will, of course, need to set up a method for authenticating against the API. At a minimum, the user or your API client and roles will need the following permissions. You'll need to be able to read the mobile device configurations, and under Jamf Pro Server Actions, send mobile device remote wipe command and view MDM commands through information for your Jamf Pro API. Optionally, if you'd like to use the scripts that are shown later in this session, you'll also need to be able to read smart mobile device groups. We highly recommend that you create a user with only the minimum of permissions required. We will need to be able to download our Wi-Fi profile, as we said, to be able to send that with a command. And there are a couple of ways that we can take to download our Jamf Pro Wi-Fi configuration profile and get that base64 encoded. So as you can see here, we are downloading the profile in the Jamf Pro instance. And then we'll need to unsign that profile so that we can read it. After you've unsigned the profile, you'll need to open the result. Open the resulting file, and it will look similar to this. I might have a drink. Now that we have our unsigned plain text file, we can base64 encode it and get our base64 blob to use in our API command. The simplest way to encode your unsigned profile is to use the website base64encode.org, or you can use terminal as shown here. Just drop in your profile and click encode. we're going to take the text from the bottom here, ready to build our API command. For those of you who are just starting to explore the world of APIs, you might feel a bit intimidated by the idea of crafting the perfect JSON request. But here's the good news, Jamf makes this easy. Our developer API reference includes a user-friendly GUI that not only helps you visualize your command, but also allows you to preview example code in a variety of programming languages, giving you an easy place to start. Let's take a look at building out the erase device command with the return to service. Here you can see that we've selected the command on the left-hand side. In this case, we know that from the previous slide that we want the MDM endpoint and we want to post a command for creation and queuing. We want to provide the Jamf Pro management ID from the device inventory record in Jamf Pro to target our device. We then need to select the command, in this case, erase device, and add in the return to service object. And this will give us the options to turn on return to service and for pasting our base64 encoded profile data. Here we can see the example code that we've built. As in this case, we've selected a shell script, and you can see that it creates a curl command that could be updated with your Jamf Pro URL and authentication details and used straight away. As you can see here, our command data is highlighted in purple, and we've assembled the erase device command, set the return to service object to true, and included the base64 encoded profile. We've taken the Jamf Pro management ID from the device inventory record to send to the device we're targeting. If you're wanting to test this out, grab that command data from the last screen and head on over to your Jamf Pro instance Swagger API interface, easily found at /API on your Jamf Pro URL. After authenticating at the top with your user that you created, navigate to the v2 MDM commands endpoint and click Try It Out. Paste your command data in here and click Execute. Within a few minutes, your selected device will receive the command, reboot, and start the return to service process. This approach really simplifies the process, making it accessible whether you're testing the waters with API commands or diving in deep with full automation scripts. Or perhaps you're like me and you're not into scripting yourself and you're not really interested in reinventing the wheel if a solution already exists. And here's the great thing about being part of this incredible Apple and Mac admins community. We really live by the motto, sharing is caring. We've got folks who excel in scripting and are more than happy to share their expertise. Zach Prawfiter, a fellow Jamf, has written a couple of scripts for leveraging return to service. These scripts are ready to be used or or if you wish to empower your non-IT users with the ability to run these scripts with some small modifications, they could be made available to be run as part of a Jamf self-service policy. Now, I wanted to share a story about one of my favourite uses of these scripts. It was late last year, right before Christmas, right before that time of the year when K-12 schools are looking down the barrel of refreshing all their devices. And I was on one of my regular calls with a K-12 school client. This was shortly after Jamf Pro had rolled out the return to service feature. And we'd been discussing return to service on our call and the possibilities for K-12 use cases, such as end-of-year device refreshes. At the end of our chat, I sent him a link to Zach's GitHub repository. Well, it didn't take him long to dive in. Within an hour after our call, he emailed me back. He'd already tested the script on a class set of devices he had lined up for a New Year refresh. And guess what? He'd managed to refresh all those devices in just under 10 minutes. That's what I call turning a time-consuming task into a breeze. And it's stories like these that really highlight how much efficiency and time saving this tool can bring to the table. These examples just scratch the surface of how the return to service API command can be leveraged. And I'm sure with all the bright minds that are in this audience, there are many more ways that return to service can be implemented. With these tools at your disposal, you can significantly streamline how you manage and refresh devices. Now let's pivot and take a closer look at empowering non-IT users with the Return to Service app. So shifting our focus to empower our non-IT users with administrator tools in a safe and controlled way. The Return to Service app. This is about as straightforward as it gets. A single button reset designed for non-IT users to easily reset a device. But let's not just talk about it. Let me show you how it works with some really great music. we've got to dance. Just like that, back to the home screen. You might remember me mentioning the university who found this app to be the perfect solution at the right time in their environment. They needed a quick, efficient way to clear user data off devices between users, and the Return to Service app was the perfect fit. It essentially allows students to take the initiative, clearing their data from the devices themselves, readying them for the next user without any hassle. Think about the possibilities in different settings. In a K-12 environment, for instance, you could deploy this app across devices with a dedicated home screen layout, or even lock the device to return to service with single app mode. And imagine the last day of school where teachers guide students through a quick reset of their devices. It's a neat way to wrap up the year with students cleaning up their classroom spaces and their digital spaces, freeing up the IT department over the holidays. The Return to Service app is a Jamf Pro add-on utility, which means it's only available to Jamf customers. While it's not out there for a general download from the App Store, you can request it through Jamf Customer Success or Support and find the listing on our Jamf Marketplace. And if you need a little extra help setting it up, there's an optional 1-hour session with our customer success engineers ready to walk you through everything. But as you'll see next, if you've got a handle on app config, you'll find the setup pretty straightforward. So let's take a really quick look at that. If you're not familiar with app configuration, this is a tab under the Return to Service App Store record in Jamf Pro. Here you'll see the components that we had discussed previously. The first key that you see here are using some of the inbuilt variables available in Jamf Pro. So here we are setting the Jamf Pro URL, and then the management ID is being pulled down for the device that the application is being run on. The client ID and client secret comes from the API client and roles that you've created for authenticating against the API. And our final key is specifying the ID of the Wi-Fi profile in your Jamf Pro instance to use for the Return to Service command. You can obtain the ID from the URL when viewing your Wi-Fi configuration profile in your Jamf Pro instance. And in this case, no need for any encoding. The Return to Service app can also be called via a URL. Using a web clip, you can use the Return to Service URL to create a shortcut to the app with a custom icon and title. You might like to make the icon and title relevant to the action the end user is performing, for example, end session or refresh device. Let's take a quick look at what that might look like in Jamf Pro. If you're going this route, make sure you set the web clip to full screen to keep things seamless and prevent any open in Return to Service prompts. And the use cases for this are as varied as they are valuable, from handling device returns in a library to refreshing devices between tests, or even enabling office admins to quickly reset devices for relief teachers. This app simplifies device management across the board, making it an essential tool in any Jamf administered environment. Before we wrap up, I wanted to mention 2 other ways that you can use to implement Return to Service that we don't have time to cover off today. Firstly, Jamf Actions. Jamf Actions is a shortcut for iOS iPadOS stack that includes a function for calling Return to Service. If you stick around till the end of today, demo from Comp Now will show all the cool things, shortcuts and Jamf actions can do. And the Return to Service macOS app, oops. No, that's all right, that's not wrong with that. Oops, sorry. And the Return to Service macOS app that will allow you to call Return to Service using the serial number of the device from your macOS desktop. Well, that wraps up our exploration of Return to Service in the context of education, where its impact on easing the workload of IT admins is particularly profound. Today we've gone through everything from the core functions of the Return to Service command to its practical applications that are streamlining device management in schools. We kick things off by detailing what Return to Service is and its enhancements of the MDM arrays device command. The automation layer, this automation layer is a game changer, streamlining the setup and reset processes in ways that dramatically improve efficiency. Then we delved into how Jamf Pro makes this feature readily accessible via the API, equipping you with the tools to implement these commands smoothly and effectively. We also touched on how scripts and the Jamf Pro API can expedite traditionally time-consuming device refreshes, like the instance with the K-12 school client who managed to refresh an entire classroom set of devices in under 10 minutes. Furthermore, the Return to Service app stands out by allowing even non-IT staff to reset devices with just a button push. This functionality not only simplifies the reset process, but also empowers educators and other non-technical staff to manage devices independently, boosting the overall efficiency of device management and significantly cutting down the time IT admins spend on routine tasks. As we conclude, I hope you've gained insights into how these tools and techniques can be harnessed to not only save time, but also reduce the usual hassles associated with technology management in education settings. Thanks for joining me, and here's to leveraging technology to make our educational environments more efficient and user-friendly.